Oh my god. Oh my god, is that what I think it is? It is! It's a new episode of B3 Reads! Folks, very special video today. The newest episode of B3 Reads, a show that I have not made an episode of in years? Yeah, that sounds about right. I kind of stopped making the show because the only thing I was really doing reads of were really just fan fictions, bad fan fictions, and eventually I was like, yeah, these are objectively bad, but also fan fiction is a good way to learn to write, and some of these might have just been written by kids, honestly, so it didn't feel fair. I didn't want to discourage just average, everyday people from being creative and writing what they want to write, honestly. Also, I found some fanfictions that were really good. So I decided, no more of that. And I haven't made a B3 Reads in quite a while. But then I found a book for $4. I overpaid for it. And it's about one of my favorite things in the world. Dinosaurs! I love dinosaurs. If you've been following this channel or any of my channels for any amount of time, you know these are my boys. They're my boys. I upload a lot of dinosaur toy videos on this channel. I read dinosaur comics. I watch dinosaur media, both fictional and nonfiction. And this dinosaur media claims to be nonfiction, but I have a feeling it's not. Today, we're looking at a nice little book. Dinosaurs of Eden. There's my ring light. Woo, woo. Dinosaurs of Eden, dude. Tracing the mystery through history. Written by Ken Ham, who I think is the Answers in Genesis guy, or one of them. I haven't read this book yet. We're going to read it together here. I have not read through this book. It's illustrated by Earl and Bonnie Snellenberger. God, wouldn't you hate to be a kid growing up with the name Snellenberger? Lord. But yeah, the art in this book is just some fun vintage dinosaur art, and I really wanted to show that off. But first we're going to read the back of this book here. Readers of all ages will take a thrilling ride in a time machine to the past when dinosaurs lived. A ride not through millions of years, but to a time not so long ago. Okay. Filled with stunning artwork, I agree on that, this fun family book will transport you on a breathtaking journey through the time gate of the Bible, the true history book of the universe. This captivating adventure by popular writer Ken Ham projects you back to the Garden of Eden and to the real world inhabited by dinosaurs, and to the exciting days of Noah's flood and the Tower of Babel. You'll be there watching, traveling through the centuries. They might be short a few years. Centuries. Learning the true history of the earth, and along the way discovering the very meaning and purpose of life. Bro, if you had the meaning and purpose of life, you really probably should have put that at the front. Join us on this journey to the very beginning of time when dinosaurs roamed Eden. Okay, this was $13.99 when it came out. Dear Lord, that seems like a lot. When did this come out? I'm sure it's in the front cover. Dinosaurs of Eden, Ken Ham Master Books. Here we go. First printing March 2001. That's actually later than I thought. I was expecting like 1995 at the latest. And I know this is only 6 years after that. But this is the 7th printing? This is the 2008 version. I don't know if any text has changed from the original printing, but I'll just assume it hasn't. I'll just assume it hasn't, but we'll see. Yeah, and you can visit Masterbook's website, which I'm not gonna be doing. It's kind of, it says it's in the Library of Congress, which is not my favorite thing, but I mean, that's where all copyrighted stuff goes, so it's fine, I guess. But we see the time gate, which is a lot like the Stargate, but for time. It's got one screen that can send you to the New Testament times and one screen that can send you to the Old Testament times. And so I guess this time machine just isn't capable of doing anything that isn't mentioned in the Bible. So can it not go forward in time? Well, I guess it can go forward to Revelations. It doesn't matter. Now we also have like an about the author page and everything here. It basically says it's been written to instruct readers about a Christian worldview found in the Bible. But I just want to say the views expressed in this book aren't really going to be the Christian worldview, because most of the people I know personally in my life are Christians, and most of them believe in evolution. They believe in science. They believe that this type of dinosaur that they're talking about lived millions of years ago, tens of millions of years ago, and longer. You can be a Christian and just see what's in the Bible as metaphor. Yeah? Jesus' parables were metaphorical stories that he told, right? And while most Christians do believe that Jesus was a real physical person, I feel like a lot of Christians do believe that many of the stories, especially the ones in the Old Testament, are just metaphorical stories. They aren't literal. But creationists believe that everything in the Bible is 100% literal, even the mistranslations that are provably mistranslations, the ones that biblical scholars will tell you are wrong. They still believe that these known and even recent mistranslations are the truth. And it has something about Ken Ham, the author, and he is the Answers in Genesis guy. Yeah, there's Answers in Genesis stuff right here, a little P.O. box for it. It says he moved to the United States in 1987 from Australia. That makes sense. That makes sense. Whenever someone outside of the United States is too dumb to live with the rest of the populace, they move to the United States. It says he's become one of the most in-demand Christian conference speakers in the U.S., which is insane. He's written a lot of books, looks like. There's a lot of speaking. And it says he helped found Answers in Genesis and the Creation Museum. Of course, the Creation Museum is part of this. Anyway, now we're going to finally get into the book here. And I just want to say, before we do this, I'm going to be dunking hard on creationism, and some of it might be dunking on Christianity in general. If you're a Christian and you're not hurting anybody, that's kosher. While I don't believe Jesus was the Son of God, I do think he was an incredible philosopher at the very least. The stuff he said about helping the poor and etc. is all really good. And if you are actually following the actual word of Jesus and not what so many people think is that, and you are actually able to believe in science, or I guess accept science, belief isn't really an issue, you're kosher in my book, dude. But this is provably wrong stuff, and we're going to get into it. Have you ever imagined what it would be like if there really were such a thing as a time machine? We could go back in history and see Solomon's Temple, for example, which would be a cool thing to see, admittedly. Now that would be incredible. Or we could watch Noah build the ark. Not help, just watch. Imagine if we could see the Garden of Eden before sin, which you wouldn't be allowed into as a sinner, but it's fine. It must have been much more beautiful than we could ever imagine. But what about dinosaurs? Wouldn't it be just fantastic to go back in history and see a real T-Rex and find out when it lived, what it ate, and how it behaved, a lot of which we actually do know because of the fossil record, but they're pretending we don't? Even though we don't have a time machine, we have something that is far better. We have a written record of the history of the universe, past, present, and future, from someone who sees and knows everything. What? You think reading a history book, the Bible's not a history book, by the way, but you think reading a history book is better than a time machine that lets you view it? That's an insane thing to say. What? I guess if you're worried about corrupting the time stream, then sure, but Jesus, that doesn't make any sense. Even if we have a time machine, however, we wouldn't understand which events of history were the most important for us to know about. But assuming you had a time machine, you would have infinite time to find out. You see, we might go to one place in a particular time, but not know that something was happening in another location which was vital for us to know about. But later you could go to that other location. You could find that out. It's a time machine. But the infinite creator of the universe made sure that all the most important events of history were recorded in a special series of books that together make up one book, the Bible. In a sense, reading the Bible is like traveling in a time machine. I guess, in a sense, reading historical records is like traveling in a time machine, and I guess there are some historical records in the Bible. Maybe. Don't treat the Bible as a history book. Please don't. And you know these people probably shouldn't say these people. You know that people who believe this probably don't believe a lot of history books. But also, God did not write the Bible. People that served God wrote the Bible. You could say God guided their hand to have what he wanted in it. But the Bible has had things removed from it, added to it, edited, mistranslated over and over and over and over again for hundreds of years. So did God want to edit what he put down the first time? And they said it's 100% accurate. So what is 100% accurate? The original Bible or the one after all the mistranslations and everything? I assume they mean the current one we have. But that means things have been removed and added and blah, 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 which means the Bible wasn't perfect. And if it was written by God, that would mean God himself isn't perfect and had to revise things. Let's keep going. Before you read on, look up the following verses in the Bible that will help you understand that the Bible really is very special. Oh my God, there's a whole list of verses here to look up. I don't want to do that. He should have just listed them, but I feel like I wouldn't be doing my due diligence here if I didn't look up at least one of them. So I'm going to look up the first one, 1 Thessalonians 2:13. Okay, so according to the New International Version of the Bible, because the Bible has multiple versions in the modern day, because Christians themselves can't even decide what in the Bible means what and is true. 1 Thessalonians 2:13 states, "And we also thank God continually when you receive the word of God, which you heard from us. You accepted it not as a human word, but as it actually is, the word of God, which is indeed at work in who you believe." Nothing about dinosaurs. But what I get from that is, you should believe everything God tells you no matter what. And I guess therefore, anything answers in Genesis tells you no matter what. What do these verses have to do with creatures like Dilophosaurus or Cryolophosaurus? And then it gives another Bible verse, 2 Timothy 3:16. "All scripture is given inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness." Okay, you've probably heard of dinosaurs. By the way, we know dinosaurs once existed because we find their bones, sometimes whole skeletons in the earth, which is in here, but they don't believe the things that those bones tell us? That's so odd to me. You have no doubt read or heard things such as dinosaurs lived millions of years ago. The disappearance of the dinosaurs is a big mystery. Dinosaurs aren't mentioned in the Bible. Blah, blah, blah. Which is kind of what they do at the end of this whole spiel. Then they say, first of all, put out of your mind all these ideas you've heard about dinosaurs, all this credible stuff that's been meticulously studied for decades and peer-reviewed, blah, blah, blah. Put all that out of your mind. Instead, let us go into our time machine, the Bible, and travel back to the beginning of history and even to the beginning of time itself. The first book of the Bible, Genesis, states, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth." Okay. God who has always existed. No one made God, for he made everything, which is odd to me because one thing a lot of Christians say to be anti-evolution and stuff is they go to the Big Bang, which is astronomy, not evolutionary biology. They always say everything has to come from something, but they never apply that to their God. Where'd their God come from? They hold everyone else to different standards than themselves, and it's infuriating. He made time, space, and matter. This is the beginning of our universe, all part of the first day in time. And ignoring all that, I just want to show you that this book really does have some really cool art. Actually, look at all these dinosaurs. They're from different places and time periods and stuff throughout the book, and they're all together. It's cool vintage dinosaur art. As you read the first chapter of Genesis, you discover that God gave us a summary of what happened on each of the 6 days of creation. I actually have read Genesis in its entirety, by the way. It says here that on day 1, time, space, earth, and light. Day 2, atmosphere. Day 3, the dry land appeared. God made plants. Day 4, the sun. So everything was just in the dark. Sun, moon, and stars. Day 5, sea creatures and flying creatures. Day 6, land animals. And then after that, Adam and then Eve. But that's in Genesis 1, I think. In Genesis 2, it actually gives a completely different roundup of this. In Genesis 2, it says that God created Adam first, I think, and then all the animals after that, and then Eve, which is completely different than this. See, if I were still a Christian, this summary of events almost seems like evolution is part of the metaphor. And I'm not saying that the ancient people that wrote Genesis knew about evolution, because they just didn't. But it says the sea animals show up first and then the land animals. That's what evolution has proven happened. The big thing in it is that they make the creatures of the sea and creatures that can fly at the same time. It's odd. That's not the right order for evolution, of course, obviously. And there is no designed order for evolution either. It depends on different selection pressures and whatnot. If I were still a Christian, I could easily talk myself into being like, oh, water to land, evolution, even though that would ignore the bird thing. By the way, some people think that the 6 days of creation were not ordinary days as we know them, but long periods of time. So see, they're saying here that other Christians believe that the creation story is a metaphor. They're admitting that right here, that it's not an entire Christian thing, it's just them. It wants me to read Exodus 20:11, not Genesis, but okay. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day, wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Okay, your all-powerful God needs rest, sure. This next paragraph just explains how the week works. I know what a week is, dude. And then it keeps finding ways to say God created everything. Like, you said that, I got it. We know that dinosaurs once existed on Earth. We find their bones, which we will discuss later. Ooh. So God must have created dinosaurs. An Englishman, Sir Richard Owen, invented the word dinosaur in 1841. He had the bones of two creatures called Iguanodon and Megalosaurus. Dinosaurs that are not given enough credit in the modern day. And he realized these were from a group of animals different from any other group he had studied. Owen recognized that they needed a special name, and those bones came from very large types of reptiles that lived on the land, and he, coined dinosaur, terrible lizard. Look at this. Look at that beautiful antique iguanodon, dude. Look at that. Oh, by the way, if you haven't checked out my Creature Preacher Megalosaurus figure review on the main channel, if you like that iguanodon, you'll like that figure. So the word dinosaurs refers to a special group of reptiles, since they lived on the land. What did God make on the sixth day? Land animal. Yeah. I get it, dude. It points out that in the creation myth that Judeo-Christian religion, Abrahamic religion, subscribes to, says that Adam and Eve were made on the same day as dinosaurs, and that means humans and dinosaurs lived together. And once again, this is the type of dinosaur they're referring to, not modern-day birds. But it says, I love this part, we can say 100%, absolutely for sure, that people lived with dinosaurs. And they can say that, because people lived with birds, but that's not what they mean. They do not have evidence for this claim. God, who doesn't tell a lie, told us in his word that land animals and Adam and Eve were made on the sixth day. God famously lies. Did he not lie to Abraham about killing his own son? Do you remember when God gave that epic YouTube prank where he told Abraham he had to kill his own son, and Abraham was gonna do it? And then God was like, JK, just cut part of his penis off, dude. God doesn't tell lies. Give me a break. And then they're about to tell us that the earth is young. Young earth creationism. Yikes. So in Genesis 5:3-11, it says, and Adam lived 130 years. Sure he did, bud. And begat a son in his own likeness, after his image, and called him Seth. And the day of Adam, after he had begotten Seth, were 800 years, and he begat sons and daughters. And all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. Sure, why not? And Seth lived 105 years, and begat. I don't need to know Adam's entire lineage, dude. Have you ever wondered why lists like this that tell us about when people had children and when they died are all through the Bible? No. God did it so we could trace the history of the world back to the beginning. I mean, I guess people do that, so sure. when we add up all these dates and the dates of other events given in the Bible, we find that God created the universe around 6,000 years ago. Provably untrue. This is a totally different view of history from the one we usually see on television, read in newspapers, or hear in almost all schools. What, you mean schools that are like accredited? Yeah. Most of us are constantly bombarded with the idea that dinosaurs lived millions of years before people. I love constantly bombarded here because it kind of implies that they're being attacked. They're not being attacked. Christians love pretending to be oppressed. They crave it. But they're like the least oppressed religion on the planet. Are there places where it's not okay to be a Christian? Yes. But it's the biggest religion in the world. This is a book from an Australian author who lives in the United States. Australia treats Christianity great. The United States, God, if you're a Christian here, the US will do anything for you. Don't sit here and pretend that most of the leaders around the world don't identify as Christian or some other Abrahamic religion. Insanity. Why then do we not find the word dinosaur in the Bible? Well, you said it was created in the 1800s. So that's probably why. Also, Garden of Eden dinosaurs, it just goes hard as art. Also, going through this book, you see these ghostly figures. So, I want to actually go back to something I said earlier. Those are the time travelers. And it seems that their time machine lets them view history without interacting with it. That kind of makes the thing they said earlier about the Bible being better than a time machine even more ridiculous, because they can't affect the time stream as time ghosts. Time ghosts! I'd watch that. Oh god. It talks about dragons, though. It talks about dragons. It's interesting to note that the word dragon occurs a number of times in the Old Testament, and when you replace it with the word dinosaur, in most instances, it seems to fit very nicely. In most instances? So not in all instances, then. So that means it doesn't fit nicely. You conned yourself, dude. Also, some Christians might say that replacing words in the Bible is actually sacrilegious, so you might want to watch out for that, bud. We've all heard the word dragon, allegedly, and we are familiar with dragon legends from around the world. For instance, some legends tell us the Chinese bred dragons. Many of the descriptions of these dragons really do fit the descriptions of some of the dinosaurs we all know about. Do you think that's because dinosaurs like these lived alongside humans? Or do you think it's because maybe they found dinosaur bones and based legends on them? China has excellent fossils. Also, someone could have seen lizards and stuff crawling around and just imagined them big. Humans like to imagine big things, like the Deadly Mantis, giant mantis movie, Tarantula, giant spider movie, even though it's not a true spider, and Answers in Genesis loves to imagine giant humans. Answers in Genesis believes giants were real, by the way, and not metaphorical giants, like most of their legends actually probably mean. Though I guess someone could have just had gigantism or been really buff or something. In a glass case in the British Museum in London, there is a very old history book, the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles, that records events that occurred nearly 1,000 years ago. In this book, there are accounts of dragons that lived beside people. So what? So what? Just because someone wrote it down does not mean it is the literal truth. You have to have actual evidence, dude. I gotta say, though, the Kintrosaurus hanging out with the little tips put over its spikes so it can't hurt anybody, that's really cool. That is some strong Dinotopia vibes right there, dude. That is a good image. That is a cool image. It's a shame that it's in this book. There's also this one with some guy from Wales slaying a dinosaur and probably going back to say it was a dragon. That has to be a low-budget, like, sci-fi movie, right? Like, there has to be one like that. Wait, that's supposed to be baryonyx? I can see it in the claws, but lord, that mug, dude. The country of Wales has a picture of a dragon on its flag. Maybe the story about St. George fighting a dragon is really an account of a fight with a dinosaur. But that doesn't look like a dinosaur, dude. That doesn't look like a dinosaur. Dinosaurs didn't have wings like that. Hey, that looks like a dinosaur. It doesn't. It objectively doesn't. There is something else about dragons that is important to understand. Look at the following Bible passage. And he shall slay the dragon that is in the sea. Isaiah 27:1. Thou breakest the heads of the dragons in the waters. Psalm 74:13. It's very clear where this is going. What were these dragons that lived in the water? They were probably the great sea reptiles like Plesiosaurus. Not dinosaurs. It does say that they aren't dinosaurs, which is good. It says they are dinosaur-like animals. How about archosaurs? That's a clade that you could use for this, and that would be perfect. Just call them archosaurs. That's what they are. The Bible even talks about creatures that were probably dinosaur-like that flew in the air. Okay, pterosaurs. They're clearly talking about pterosaurs now. Like it mentions Pteranodon and Rhamphorhynchus here. Rhamphorhynchus, good choice, by the way. Underappreciated pterosaur there. Not dinosaurs. They're just not. So it's like, you're like, oh, well, maybe dinosaurs couldn't be the flying dragons, but pterosaurs could be. So you're already like splitting your own hairs here. Once again, it would be a cool movie to watch. Knights fighting like a big Quetzalcoatlus or something. That would be sick. That'd be real sick. That's not the case. I mean, once again, look back at the picture of a dragon they show here. Does that look like a pterosaur? It doesn't look like a dinosaur, but it doesn't look like a pterosaur either, now does it? Because it's not one. It's a legend, dude. It's important for you to understand, I doubt it, but it says it's important for you to understand that the form of the original written Hebrew image language of Genesis, the word translated into English as whales, actually is the word dragons. So now you care about what our Bible originally said? Also, the word translated fowl doesn't just mean birds. In the Hebrew language, the word means any flying creature. So what? That doesn't mean pterosaurs definitely existed. That just means that they could also be talking about bugs. If you're saying the word fowl could be any flying creature, so it must be a pterosaur, that's stupid. That's like the either-or fallacy or something crazy. It could also be a giant bug monster. It could be anything, dude. It could be it could be the Judas breed from Mimic. It doesn't have to be a pterosaur. You ever been to a museum and seen a skull, jaw, or teeth of a T-Rex? Yes. 6 feet long, filled with teeth up to 6 inches long. This certainly makes you wonder what T-Rex ate. Other animals, people, anything he wanted to. It was other animals, by the way. By the way, it says other animals, people, anything he wanted to. People are animals. We're great apes. That's true. I've had that argument in real life with a lot of people. They're like, humans aren't animals. Well, I'm not a fungus. Now, this may come as a surprise, but we do know what T-Rex originally ate. And it wasn't animals or people. People or animals. Stop. It was plants. That's wrong. That's objectively incorrect. Why would they need the crushing strength of their jaw for plants? Why would they need to ambush plants? Don't scratch the carpet. Hey. And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree, yielding seed. Okay, do we really need every word of this? To you it shall be for meat, and to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat. And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the 6th day. So what they're trying to say is, predation didn't exist. Carnivores didn't exist. Everything ate plants. Okay. Whatever. It's not true. Adam, Eve, and all the animals were told they were only to eat plants for food. They were all vegetarian. That's wrong. Now, it assures you that it's okay to eat meat today. Originally, when everything was perfect, there were no meat eaters. Adam and Eve weren't frightened of any of the animals. They all lived in perfect harmony. There was no death, disease, suffering, or bloodshed in the world. By the way, when plants are eaten, they don't die in the sense that animals do today. In the Hebrew language, animals and humans have a special life principle called nefesh, Plants do not have this because they are very different from animals. Very good answers in Genesis. Plants are very different from animals. Way to go! Yo, is that a Stemasuchus? Huh. Look at that. That is an ugly little Stemasuchus. But yeah, look at everybody chomping grass, including the mighty Ceratosaurus. If you know what that's a reference to, let me know down below. At this stage, you may have two questions. Why did animals like the T-Rex have fierce-looking, sharp teeth if they were vegetarians? And why is the world today one in which there is death, disease, suffering, and bloodshed everywhere? Well, for one thing, Christians caused a lot of that death and bloodshed and stuff, so maybe lay off. Here's a question for you to think about, allegedly. Do animals like T-Rex really have fierce-looking teeth? Or is it just because we know they eat other animals? And sadly, sometimes people. People are animals. But also, the teeth are one of the ways that we do know they ate animals. That's some of the evidence. We think all animals with teeth like theirs must be savage meat eaters. Being a carnivore doesn't mean you're savage. That's weird. Now, the truth, what they allege is the truth. Even though bears have teeth like lions and tigers, most bears eat mainly plants and fruits. Bears are omnivorous, dude. They're omnivorous. It says some bears are almost totally vegetarian, but the majority of bears are omnivores. Their teeth are for both, like ours. Consider the panda. It has really sharp teeth, but eats mainly plants. Mainly is the key word there. They feed mainly on bamboo, but bamboo is tough. I actually use bamboo in terrariums and vivariums and stuff all the time. This is tough stuff. You would need tough, strong teeth to eat this. It goes on to point out that having sharp teeth doesn't mean you're a meat eater. And that's kind of true, actually. There are animals, including prehistoric ones, that have serrated teeth to strip vegetation. But those serrated teeth are very different than the serrated teeth that carnivores have. That's probably why they show us a diagram of a tyrannosaur tooth, but not a diagram of, say, a diplodocus tooth. I'm not going to pronounce it diplodocus. That sounds ridiculous, Jerry. I just took a break to do care for all the animals we keep for the Safari Sam show on our main channel, and there's a big, huge batch of new eggs in there, and I'm very happy. Now, here it says that every animal, including humans, which are animals, which they don't want to admit, but it's true, all ate their veggies, and then there was one horrible day that changed everything. Think about the world you live in. People and animals get sick and die. I'm going to stop pointing out the people and animals thing. People are getting killed. Wait, people are killed by accident. Animals like lions will attack gazelle, kill, and eat it. We dig up dead bones, fossils, of enormous numbers of animals, including dinosaurs. In many ways, it's not a nice world at all. Okay. It's a world full of suffering, sickness, sadness, and death. Death and predation aren't necessarily bad things. They can be bad things for the things happening to them, but it keeps the world turning, metaphorically. The dead matter breaks down, which feeds the plants feed the animals, and then those animals feed different animals whose poop feeds the plants. So here it quotes Genesis 2:16 and 17, "And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, Of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat, but of the tree of knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it. For in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die." Why did God, if he didn't want people to eat from this tree, that tree, by the way, gave humans free will, according to the Bible. So if you like having free will, you don't like God. But why did God put this tree in the Garden of Eden? There was a whole planet. Why didn't he just pop it out there? Like, click and drag, you know? It's claiming that humans already had free will, but many scholars will tell you that it's the fruit that gave humans this free will. Because, once again, theologists and stuff don't agree with each other. You know, it's like comic book fans arguing over continuity. It's the same thing. So it says Adam disobeyed God, ate the fruit, and that created sin. So God made a fruit that could breed sin in people but it's humans' fault. Okay. This would keep Adam from being immortal, and then he and eventually everything else would die. And it says Adam started to die the very moment he ate the fruit. But, I mean, it must have been really slow acting, because it said he lived to be 930 earlier. I do want to point out the art here, not of the dinosaurs, but actually of Adam and Eve. You see the fruit they're eating? Typically, it's presented as an apple in art, but it's not. It looks more like bunches of grapes or something. That's actually very, very interesting and kind of unique. So, according to this book, apparently, since a couple humans did something wrong, that means every single other living thing in existence has to suffer? Explain that to me logically, okay? Why does God punish everything else for what Adam and Eve did? Does that make sense to you? Death didn't exist before a guy ate a fruit. That tracks. It also says this made all of his descendants sinners, so they're paying for his crimes? That doesn't make any sense, dude. It says that God and Adam once had a perfect relationship, but if they did, I mean, this probably wouldn't have happened in the first place, right? God could not allow a sinful Adam to live. Adam and all his descendants had to die. Do you see how that's problematic language? You're saying all people are sinners and sinners have to die. That's pretty radical, don't you think? I mean, geez, it says souls live on forever, but as sinners you're separated from God forever. And I see this. It says in Genesis 3:21, God himself killed an animal. So is that not sin? It said killing was sin, but God can do it and it's fine. And he put the clothes of this animal on Adam and Eve. So they didn't even want to kill it. God killed the animal, made clothes of it, and put it on Adam and Eve. They didn't even want to kill the animal? What? I mean, it's apparently to show them the consequences of their actions, but what did this sheep do? Look at all that blood. What did this sheep do? That's a kid watching this, man. Look, they didn't want this. They didn't want this, dude. Also, that's a lot of wool from one sheep, dear Lord. It says here that, oh, and this animal that was killed represents the one who will come and die for their sins. But an animal can't die from their sins. Because here's what it says. An animal couldn't take away our sins since we are not connected to the animals as evolutionists teach. We're connected to animals. Most Christians will tell you that we have a connection to animals. Do you not have a connection to animals? Here it says that Jesus died for my sins and I should give over my life to him, blah, blah, blah. If I wanted to hear that, I would visit my mother, okay? Death is such a sad thing, isn't it? It can be, yeah. People die and animals die and they don't say anything about plants. It's all such a sad world. But what a reminder of the awfulness of sin. And what a reminder of the fact that we need to trust Jesus and confess our sin. Blah, blah, blah. One of Adam's children, Cain, murdered his brother. Animals probably started to kill and eat each other. Probably. Animals probably started to kill and eat each other? We know animals kill and eat each other. I've seen it. When I feed a dubia roach to my gecko, it's not a probably. He's killing that gecko. I mean, he's killing that roach. Damn it. Also, this is a children's book, right? There are some graphic depictions in this. Look, here's Cain and Abel. Just full-on murder victim, right there, blood coming out of his head. I guess if you're able to show children violence, then you can do it. Feel free to laugh at any time. Also, I want to show you this dinosaur art of Oviraptor eating some eggs. Now, in this book's defense, what I'm about to tell you is probably not known yet, because we used to believe that Oviraptor ate a diet of mainly eggs. We kept finding their corpses next to fossilized nests, and we were like, oh, they died trying to steal eggs. They were like killed by the mother or whatever. But we actually found out that they gave their lives protecting their children. Their name literally means egg thief, but they died protecting eggs. Absolute slander. And today, we still depict them as egg thieves. It's just not the case. Look at this Protoceratops absolutely tearing into this Velociraptor to protect her hatchlings. And they would have lived in the same time and place too, so that's pretty interesting. Oh man, now we're getting into Noah's Ark. In Genesis chapter 6, we read that God told Noah he was going to judge the earth because of the wickedness of man, aka genocide. God commits a genocide. Very fun. Hey, anyone who doesn't bow down and worship me, they deserve to die. Horrible. So God tells Noah to build an ark. I think the standard of measurement actually used in the Bible, cubics, something like that. But answers in Genesis, I think, estimates that the boat would have been around 437 feet long, 73 feet wide, and 44 feet high. This ark was built to keep Noah's family and 2 of every animal, land dwelling and air breathing. Noah didn't have to go collect them. They were sent to Noah by God. How many animals do the people at Answers in Genesis, like how many animals do they think existed during the time of Noah? 2 of every animal? That's a lot, folks. Yeah, so this book is claiming that dinosaurs were on Noah's Ark, which I think is really something to say, for sure. Others say, but dinosaurs were too big. They wouldn't fit on the Ark, which is a good point. And then the book says, it is true that some of the skeletons of dinosaurs that have been discovered are huge. For instance, scientists estimate that T-Rex grew up to 20 feet tall, 50 feet long, and weighed 10 tons. One of the largest dinosaurs, Ultrasaurus, is estimated to have weighed 55 tons, with a height of 52 feet and length of 82 feet. It lists more, another one after that. It just keeps going. But the average size of a dinosaur, after considering the skeletons, is of a small pony or sheep. I actually don't know if that's true. Once again, I didn't read this ahead of time in script. This is a reaction, like an in-time reaction. There's still a lot of dinosaurs. Like, the last time I read something on this, it said that every year, on average, there's 1 new dinosaur discovered per week. I'm not saying every week a new one is discovered. I'm saying that by the end of the year, you average it all out, there's enough to be about once a week. That's a ton of dinosaurs to put on the Ark. And to be honest, extant animals that we have today wouldn't all fit on this Ark with these tiny measurements, honestly. Like, it's big for a boat, I guess. And skilled craftsmen haven't been able to make boats by hands out of wood like this in our modern day, to my knowledge. Even just fitting all the arthropods on there. There's so many. The creator does have an inordinate fondness of beetles, after all. Oh my God! But also, what about the fish? They would have all died in the flood. Fish and marine stuff. Because a lot of them are built for... Not built, that does imply creationism. A lot of them evolved to live in salt water, a lot of stuff evolved to live in fresh water, and there's always brackish water and blah blah blah. But with the great flood of the fresh water coming down, the ocean flooding, that's all the fresh and salt water mixing, that would kill everything. And if the flood is really fast and stuff, a lot of debris, a lot of pollution and stuff in the water, that would kill stuff too. All the stuff in the ocean would die. What did they do to deserve that? God kills all the animals? I mean, he's all powerful. Couldn't he just snap his fingers and everyone he wants dead be dead? Couldn't he just will it? Why does he have to use a flood? Why? What did the plants and animals and stuff do, man? Dinosaurs hatched out of eggs, and the largest dinosaur egg found is about the size of a football, so a baby T-Rex would probably have been small enough to sit on your shoulder. So what they're saying is now is that all of the largest dinosaurs that got on the boat were babies. You realize that the younger dinosaurs that are still growing are probably going to eat a lot more than you would expect. But still, that doesn't really make sense. Okay, then those 2 grow up in what? It's incest from now on? Why is this book so cool with incest? I mean, who is this, Prager? So now it gives us this big ol' size chart, and it talks more about dinosaur sizes. Some people argue, but there were too many dinosaurs to fit on the Ark, although scientists have made up over 600... Ooh. Oh, it's the kinds argument. So these young Earth creationists, genus and species, they don't understand that. And while, the species concept isn't a perfect way to categorize animals and stuff, it's better than kinds. let me show you this. Some people argue, but there were too many dinosaurs to fit on the ark. Although scientists have, it says made up here, to try to make you feel like they're lying, that scientists made up. It says made up over 600 names of dinosaurs. Yeah, all names are made up. All words are made up. Somebody had to make them up. That's how language works. It says there were probably actually only 50 different kinds of dinosaurs. Creationists have this thing called kinds because I guess the terms genus and species just didn't exist when the Bible was written. So since they aren't in there, young earth creationists, I guess, just don't think they're a thing. So they call things kinds. And then they're like, oh, like, so to them, I guess a theropod would be a kind. And I've actually seen young earth creationists be like, and then kinds went on to become all the different things. So they would think that during the flood or whatever, there would have been one kind of theropod, say T-Rex, and then those T-Rexes went on to breed and become things like Allosaurus and whatnot, which is literally evolution, which they don't believe in. So that's kind of insane to me. There's nothing in the Bible that indicates any of the dinosaurs died out before the flood, which is because dinosaurs aren't in the Bible, despite the fact that you really want them to be, because dinosaurs make it impossible to take the Bible literally, at least the creation myth part of it. So they just struggle and they have to force dinosaurs into their worldview. Instead of going with what the evidence says, they go with what their book says and try to make the evidence fit it. That's not science, okay? Trying to prove yourself right isn't scientific. Real scientists don't try to prove themselves right. They try to prove themselves wrong. Oh, look at here. It's like, it's so obvious. 2 of every kind of dinosaur, which probably meant 100 dinosaurs at most. Don't give me that so obvious thing. It's not obvious because it's not true. Jesus, look at this. In addition to the flood, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, etc. And the book's just like, yeah, anyone that wasn't on the ark drowned, animals and everything. And it shows this image of these poor dinosaurs and humans and extant animals and stuff just absolutely getting wrecked by the genocidal psychopath of a god that they worship. There's the ark up there, safe and sound, ready to inbreed. This is just horrible, honestly. As a result, you would expect to find billions of dead things buried in rock layers laid down by water all over the earth. In other words, most of the fossils we find in the earth's surface are the remains of creatures and plants buried during the time of the flood. Okay, so why don't we have fossils of all of our extant animals today? Because your claim is BS. If this global flood thing were true, we would have the best fossil record ever. Fossils would not be as relatively rare and incomplete as they are. We would have incredible, perfect, beautiful, complete fossils. But we don't because this didn't happen. Many people think that most fossils are millions of years old, probably because they are. Remember, however, that there was no death of animals or people before sin. Don't say remember like it's a fact. Some people object to this because they think it takes millions of years to turn a dead animal into a fossil, and it usually does. The youngest fossils I think we have ever had are 10,000 years old. That's the youngest that the current evidence says a fossil can be. 10,000 years. When you think about it, if animals and plants that die are just left on the ground, they decay into dust? To form a fossil of an animal or plant, they must be covered by lots of mud very quickly, or they'll just disappear? Do they not know about, like, decomposition and stuff? I was a mortician. I can explain it to you if you need me to. They do turn to other things, but dust? You think they just go poof? No. This book is trying to claim that fossils could only exist because of a flood. There's fossils all over the world, which means there must have been a flood all over the world. No, it doesn't. There's water all over the world to this very day, right? To this very day. Water is needed for fossilization. Things that live near or in water have a preservation bias. Things that have, like harder things, like horns and bones and shells, have a preservation bias. The flood isn't the only water to ever be on the planet. One, because it wasn't on the planet, it didn't happen. There's still water today. How could you make this claim? How could you possibly make this claim? Because the only way you could make this claim and really believe it is if you thought there was no water on the planet before or after the flood. That's actually insane. So 8 people and the different kinds of animals were all on the ark. What happened when the flood was over? An inbreeding orgy, I would assume. This is a secondhand copy of this book. There's a note in here in pencil. It says 16,945 feet high, which I certainly hope is referring to something in here. We are told in Genesis chapter 8 that the ark came to rest in the area known as the Mountains of Ararat. Okay, this area is today in the country of Turkey, so that must just be how high the mountain is. Noah's family and all the animals came out of the ark, so 2 of every kind of dinosaur also came out, ready to reproduce and spread out across the earth, ready to inbreed. And how'd they get all across the earth? How did a lot of these cross oceans and stuff to get to and from Noah? Explain that to me like I'm 5, man. It says that humans and dinosaurs have been living together for 4,500 years since the flood. And they claim there's lots of evidence. And I guess if you've ever seen a bird, that's evidence. But once again, they don't mean modern day extant birds. They mean these. So their first little bullet point here is dragon legends, which they touched on. They already touched on that. But once again, just because someone writes something down does not mean it's true. Consider this description of a dragon from a historical account of life in England that describes the animals people saw in 1405 AD. Close to the town of Burris, near Sudbury, there has lately appeared to the great herd of the countryside a dragon, vast in body, with a crested head, teeth like a saw, and a tail extending to an enormous length. That's from After the Flood by Bill Cooper, which really sounds like a creationist book. I'm going to grab my phone and look that up, because After the Flood, that has to be a creationist book, right? Yeah, it is. It's a book trying to claim that all of Europe is descended from Noah. You know, the brown guy who landed in Turkey. Now it says that this dragon with crested head, teeth like a saw, and a long tail would probably be Dilophosaurus or Cryolophosaurus. I don't know where Dilophosaurus hails from. I don't know where those fossils are found off the top of my head. Cryolophosaurus? Antarctica. Cryolophosaurus fossils are found in Antarctica. Why are they only found there and not in the English countryside? Could it be because it wasn't there and the story about a dragon is just folklore? Although I have to say, cool image of Cryolophosaurus and Dilophosaurus fighting over a meal here. This is a movie I'd watch, right? The English countryside is terrorized by dragons, but we as the viewer know that they're dinosaurs. But the country folk have to pit them against each other to end their reign of terror. I mean, the Sci-Fi Channel would produce it. There are interesting rock carvings and painting in different parts of the world that look like dinosaurs. That doesn't mean dinosaurs live near humans. I mean, look at this. Humans made this Triceratops. Do you think the people that made this toy saw a real, live Triceratops? No! In Natural Bridges National Monument in Utah, there is a painting made by the Indians. They call them Indians in this book. I'm just reading it verbatim. I would normally call them Native Americans, but I have heard of many Native American people actually do prefer to be called Indians. Just know, that's what the book says, so that's the word I'm using. There's a painting made by Indians that even evolutionists admit looks like a sauropod dinosaur. Just because people admit that it looks like a dinosaur does not mean it is one. Fran Bridges recognized authority on petroglyphs, rock art, by the way, in the American Southwest and stated, the petroglyph bears striking resemblance to a dinosaur, specifically a brontosaurus, with a long tail and neck, small head, and all. She says it bears striking resemblance to, she doesn't say that it is. Evolutionists won't accept the petroglyph is a dinosaur because they don't believe people lived with dinosaurs. Once again, evolutionists do believe people lived with dinosaurs, just not the types of dinosaurs they're talking about here. But they accept other animals the Indians have painted as real animals that they observed. Yes, we do, because many of those animals are still alive today and we can see them. Native Americans paint a deer? I see deer all the time. Are you kidding me? Native American paints a snake? Yeah, I've seen tons of snakes, dude. I've never seen a sauropod dinosaur romping around. Because of their bias against the Bible, evolutionists won't accept the obvious. Indians saw dinosaurs. Bias against the Bible. You're the ones being biased here, trying to force dinosaurs into the Bible. Also, I'm actually very familiar with this specific petroglyph. They include an image of it, and if they didn't include this image, I might not have known this was the specific one they were talking about. Actually, I probably would have. But yeah, here you go. It sure does look like a sauropod dinosaur. That's true. Look at that tail drag, though. We know they don't drag their tails like that anymore, so that's one strike there. Actually, when this book was released, we knew they didn't drag their tails anymore, because the artistic depiction right below it is not dragging its tail. Look! They updated it there. That's what we once thought they looked like. We know now it's not what they look like. But also, this is an edited image highlighted to show certain parts of the petroglyph. If you highlight the other parts, there's actually crazy stuff going on here, and some parts of it are actually just parts of the rock and might not even be parts of the petroglyph. Whenever you see an image of this petroglyph, it's edited. So, that's an edited photo. It's just the version of, and the edits serve a scientific purpose and a historical purpose. It's so you can see the image better. Because unless you're there looking at the rock, it's actually very difficult to see in photographs. But this specific edit pushes their narrative, so they use it, even though that edit itself, with the tail drag, is itself evidence that it's not a dinosaur. It could be anything, dude. It could really be like anything. Also, like the Native Americans and all these other cultures and stuff, they painted like mythical creatures that they made up and stuff too. Do the people that made this book believe in those? I very much doubt it. It also has this little annotation here about the Brontosaurus, talking about how now we call it Apatosaurus because blah blah blah. But I think the current consensus among paleontologists is that Apatosaurus and Brontosaurus were different dinosaurs. There's been a lot of arguments about it for my whole life, whether the Apatosaurus and Brontosaurus were the same dinosaur or different dinosaurs. Once again, at the time of recording this, I think the current consensus is that Brontosaurus is its own species. They have another thing here. Mokilemembe. It's a cryptid in Africa. A cool one. I've read books about it and stuff. I'm into cryptids. It's cool. They're saying that this is true. They're saying Mokilemembe is real. That's what this book is claiming, which is kind of insane. Not only are they saying it's real, they're saying it's definitely a sauropod dinosaur, even though I'm sure none of them have ever seen it, and we don't have any physical evidence of its existence. It's honestly probably just like a log in the river. It says here, it certainly would surprise creationists if this was really a living dinosaur. Yeah, it would surprise creationists. But you know what else it would do? Make them incredibly excited. Oh, I'm sorry, it says it wouldn't surprise creationists. In my head, I read that as would surprise evolutionists. I might be dumb, guys. See, creationists, that's how you admit when you're wrong. This is all very fascinating. But there's another special piece of evidence that indicates dinosaurs lived after the flood, which comes from the Bible. You don't have to tell us it's from the Bible, man. We know. Can you think of any passage in the Bible that might describe a dinosaur living after the flood? Okay, now we're going into the book of Job. And since it's talking about Job, I know we're going to get into the behemoth and the leviathan here. If you don't know about the behemoth and the leviathan, they're kaiju. They're the two kaiju in the Bible, which is kind of sick, and I think the Monsterverse even named a couple kaiju after them. Actually, isn't Behemoth in Stone Mountain, Georgia? Isn't that where Behemoth is supposed to be? I live very close to there, so... But yeah, see, here it is right here. Behold now Behemoth, which I made with thee. He eateth grass like an ox. Lo now, his strength is in his loins. Mine too, bud. And his force is in the navel of his belly. Me too. And this is all from like Job 40, 15 through 24. It's just like sucking the dick of the behemoth, talking about how tough it is, how cool it is. This animal was the chief of the ways of God, which means it was the largest land animal God had made. It is also described as having a tail like a cedar tree. Many people have thought that God was describing an elephant or a hippopotamus. I've never heard anyone claim that before. I think people just think it's a mythical beast from the Bible. Like, I've never heard anyone claim that the behemoth was an actual modern day animal. I mean, it could have been inspired by one. Oh, for sure, I'd say it was. As far as we know, one of the dinosaurs was the largest land animal that lived on the Earth. Yeah, I think they used to say it was Argentinosaurus, but I think that's outdated info now. I think they've found something maybe slightly bigger. This description fits beautifully one of the sauropod dinosaurs like Brachiosaurus. And yeah, the description of the behemoth, I guess, does kind of fit something like that, but show it to me. Show me the behemoth in person. I want to see it. We can't say for sure that the behemoth was a dinosaur, but it certainly makes sense that it was. No, it doesn't. And you can't, yeah, you're right, you can't say that for sure. But you are, though. More evidence that dinosaurs lived recently comes from the finds of fresh dinosaur bones? I don't think so. Evolutionists in Montana, just say paleontologists, found parts of a T-Rex bone that had not fossilized, and it appeared to have red blood cells still present. So here's the thing. I don't know specifically what discovery they're talking about here. I might have to look it up. Because the thing is, if something fossilizes well enough, cells can fossilize. The reason we know what color Coelophysis was is because they found one so well preserved that you could see the melanin cells, and the shapes of melanin cells tell you what color they were. So cells can fossilize. So they're saying it still had red blood cells. They're saying it hadn't fossilized. I'm going to look this up. Okay, so I looked this up, and it's actually incredibly interesting. Wow, I actually did not know about this. It's odd that this discovery is in this book because it seems to have happened after the original 2001 first printing. So I think this is something they came back and added to this dinosaur book. They did find this, actually, and evolutionists aren't trying to hide it or anything. They're celebrating this discovery. This discovery helps learn more about dinosaurs. They have this kind of soft tissue because apparently it kind of, something inside it acted like formaldehyde and preserved it. Formaldehyde is a gas, but its liquid state is formalin, which is what we use to embalm people. Former mortician, sorry. But see, Answers in Genesis in this book here says it wasn't fossilized. It is fossilized. There's preserved tissues and stuff, but the bone is fossilized. The only reason they found the preserved tissue is because they destroyed the bone. Most people will not destroy fossils like this. They won't. They won't dissolve them in acid like this, especially T-Rex fossils, which are worth a lot of money to researchers, museums, and unfortunately private collectors. That means that a lot of tissues like this could still be preserved inside of fossils that we're not willing to destroy, which is very interesting. But once again, studying these helps us learn more about dinosaurs and prove all of this wrong. Looks like iron is what saved it, according to this article in Live Science from 2013. Dinosaur sculptor and explorer Buddy Davis found unfossilized, frozen dinosaur bones in Alaska. Even evolutionists admit these bones wouldn't have been frozen for millions of years. If dinosaur bones really were millions of years old, they should have decayed away or become fossilized. So it's claiming that this is a dinosaur from after the flood. But that kind of feels like a mammoth, doesn't it? I just threw my phone way over here. Now I gotta Google something else. Buddy Davis is Answers in Genesis's personal paleo artist. So he's not a scientist. Also, I'm looking through tons of articles about him. I don't see anything about him discovering bones. It's all about his sculptures, some of which look really cool. I have to admit, but he's no scientist, man. Like, rest in peace and all, dude, but I don't even see anything about this. If someone has more information on this, send it to me, but I don't think that's what happened. Oh, wow. There's a depiction of Archaeopteryx in here, and I've said in many videos before, most of them on my main channel, that I miss the colorful Archaeopteryx, because when I was a kid, it was always portrayed really colorful, almost a rainbow of colors like these Archaeopteryx. But now we know, because of the same methods that I talked about with Coelophysis, that Archaeopteryx was black and white. And that's so boring. I miss the rainbow Archaeopteryx. But see, the fun thing about that is new evidence came to light, and we changed what we accept, what we believe. It's that easy. But wow, look at all these critters. Look at that big old Noah mural. So many Dino Binos. Oh, it's Tower of Babel time. Oh no. Noah's family completely repopulated the earth, somehow. And then people rebelled against God again. Look, God, I'm going to talk to you right now. If people keep rebelling against you like this, you're the common denominator, dude. It says they built a tower to worship the heavens instead of worshiping God. The Tower of Babel tried to reach the heavens. It fell. We know the story. We also got more Dinotopia-esque stuff going on here, including this very unfortunate dinosaur here. Just an incredibly, incredibly unfortunate horn. So according to the Bible, the reason that people have several different languages is because of the Tower of Babel. He punished them by spreading them all around and giving them different languages, which somehow means dinosaurs were real. Or dinosaurs living alongside these humans were real. Dinosaurs were real. That's another big thing today. There's this huge dinosaur denial movement, which is also a Christian-based movement. It says here that the flood also ended up causing the Ice Age. We're still in the Ice Age, by the way. We're just in an interglacial period. But, okay. And it says when people left the Tower of Babel and were spread around, they took their favorite dinosaurs with them. And honestly, I totally understand that. I would take my favorite dinosaurs with me, too. If you want to learn more about the Ice Age, contact Answers in Genesis. Or you could just tell me, man. Oh, no. Look at these poor dodos just getting clubbed. That's like actually really sad. So it's talking about endangered species now? And how the curse and the flood would cause species to be endangered. And it says that a conversation with someone at a zoo might go like this. Question. Excuse me, Mr. Scientist. Can you tell me why you have an endangered species program? Answer. Why do we have an endangered species program? It's so obvious, isn't it? Okay, so no one at the zoo is going to talk like that to a child or even an adult that asks for endangered species to be explained. They'll probably be excited to answer you. They want to spread the knowledge. This is treating scientists like gatekeepers. It's so obvious, isn't it? What? So that, yeah, this is intentionally trying to frame scientists and science educators as just these snobby know-it-all jerks. And there are some out there, of course. There are people like that. There are Christians like that as well. Also, a lot of the people that do study these things and educate people about these things are also Christians. You don't have to choose. You can believe in science and believe in God. It's fine. Anyway, this alleged scientist goes on to say, lots of species of animals have become extinct, like the Australian eastern hair wallaby, which became extinct in 1890, the Indonesian Bali tiger, which became extinct in 1937, or the Mexican silver grizzly, which became extinct in 1964. Get to the point. Scientists estimate that on average we lose 1 to 3 species of animal every day from the Earth. Lots of animals are on our endangered species list. We've lost thousands of species. We're trying to stop animals from becoming extinct. That used 1,000 words to explain a short thing. We're trying to stop animals from becoming extinct. An endangered species is an animal in danger of becoming extinct. That's all you have to say. And anyone at the zoo would gladly tell you that. This hypothetical kid asks another question. Why do animals go extinct? And again, they have the scientist character go, why? It should be obvious. Here are just a few of the many reasons. Look around the earth and observe. Famines, droughts, floods, fire, disease, people killing them for food or skins, people destroying their habitats, and animals killing each other. These are just a few of the reasons. Everyone should know these things. They're not going to deliver the information like that. They're just not. This is, once again, they're intentionally giving them dialogue to make them look like just these huge, mean jerks. Well then, can you tell me what happened to the dinosaurs? Dinosaurs? What happened to them? We don't know. We haven't really got a clue. It's a mystery. They died out millions of years ago. In fairness to Answers in Genesis, when this book was published, I don't think we did know exactly what killed the dinosaurs. That's something that's been discovered in my lifetime, right? We now know it was the meteor. We've found the KP boundary and everything. We know. It's been proven. But when this book was published, I don't think that discovery had been made yet. So there were a lot of hypotheses and stuff about that. But of course, Answers in Genesis here claims we do know the flood and then people killing animals, blah, blah, blah. They just went extinct like any other animal goes extinct. And I guess some dinosaurs did go extinct in the ways that other animals go extinct, because not every single dinosaur was killed by the meteor. A lot of dinosaurs were already extinct by then because of just how nature works. But still, come on, guys. It says here there's no mystery whatsoever. I would hate to live in a world with no mystery. I would despise that. If this is true, why don't the majority of scientists understand this? Because it's not true, man. The art's not bad, though. Gotta admit, the art's not bad. Okay, I haven't started reading this page yet, but there is a graphic that is a gross undersimplification of evolution and natural selection. There is just so much wrong with this, it could be its own video. It says here, the reason most scientists don't know what happened to the dinosaurs is because they've been brainwashed to believe in molecules to man evolution. It says somehow chemicals turned into life. We do know how. Abiogenesis. You can do it in a jar, dude. I've done it. I did it in grade school. They believe that over millions of years, one kind of animal slowly changed into a different kind of animal. Once again, another thing with the word kind. The fossil record is supposedly the record of this evolutionary process. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. Evolutionists don't have a time machine to know what happened in the past. They weren't there, so they have to make guesses as to what they think happened. What is this? What are you doing right now? Also, they aren't making guesses. The fossil record, in a way, is a time machine that you can use to observe the past. You're making guesses, dude. At least theirs are based on evidence, man. When they dig up fossils, they don't dig up a history book that tells them what happened. But once again, fossils are kind of a history book. They use this image of Dromaeosaurus and an emu because they're trying to prove that dinosaurs and modern birds aren't related. But look at that. This image, I feel like, actually serves as an aid when trying to argue that they are related. But they're trying to use it to argue they aren't. And look what it says here. Why don't the evolutionists find transitional forms between dinosaurs and birds? The transitional forms argument is a straw man. Why don't you find the transitional forms? They do. Let me use some of these Godzilla dollies as an example. So let's say an evolutionist is arguing that little Godzilla here evolved over the years into this 89 Godzilla, right? Evolutionists want to see a transitional form, a missing link that links them together. And then scientists, say, discover this 54 Godzilla. Boom, you can see how this could evolve into that, and then this bigger one. Then you know what creationists do? Then they want a transitional form between little and 54, and a transitional form between 54 and 89. It's a straw man. No matter how many items you give as evidence, they won't believe it. It's just not how it works. The changes are gradual. There's no chicken poops out an egg that's a completely different animal. It's gradual changes. This is just arguing in bad faith. It claims that fossils with feathers don't exist here. They definitely do. I have seen some. They're real. A lot of them come from China. No way. No way. You can't do this. Okay, so first off, they make fun of evolutionists because they say hummingbirds are dinosaurs. Hummingbirds are dinosaurs. But then, the book that it cites for what they state in this paragraph is The Great Dinosaur Mystery Solved. Pages 74 to 77. Who wrote The Great Dinosaur Mystery Solved? Ken Ham. He's using himself as a reference. You can't do that. So they take us back to the Garden of Eden in Genesis here, and it says we find that Adam sinned because he didn't accept what God told him to do. Adam thought he could decide the truth for himself instead of listening to God's word. Now, because we are descendants of Adam, we are sinners just like him. God, my worst nightmare is being like my father, so this is like extra insane. It says that human nature is that they don't want to listen to God's word, but most humans are religious. The three biggest religions in the world are all Abrahamic religions for this God. So I would argue our nature is actually that we want to believe in a God. It says this nature to not listen to God is why people are so easily led astray by evolutionist teachings, such as millions of years of history. Down deep in our hearts, we would rather listen to the fallible scientist opinions than the clear Word of God. If you think the Word of God is clear, you're reading a very different Bible than everybody else. I'm of course kidding. Most Christians haven't read the Bible. But we got a lot more Garden of Eden art with some Dino Beanos and stuff. Oh, also, my favorite dinosaur, Psittacosaurus, is here. He's gigantic, but he's here. It says here that people deliberately reject science because they don't want to believe, or deliberately reject God, because they are the ones deliberately rejecting science because they don't want to believe in spite of evidence. They're pointing the finger at people for doing what they're doing. It's really insane. Sorry if I seem like I'm losing it. I've been making this video a lot longer than you've been watching it because I'm sitting here reading through this whole thing and sitting up and saying things, and it's after midnight, and I started doing this at like 9:30, and I'm very tired, man. It says scientists, like everyone else, are sinners. They don't want to believe and has nothing to do with evidence. It definitely has to do with evidence. I also love the art on this. You have these kids in science class, and they're reading the Bible and ignoring their science textbooks and everything, and their teacher, who has the longest arms I've ever seen on a man, is telling them to stop. Yeah, of course he's telling them to stop. If you were a teacher trying to teach kids something, and all the kids in the room were just sitting there reading a material that wasn't a material for the class and ignoring you, you'd tell them to stop reading it too. The only reason it's an issue is because it's the Bible. Oh, now it's trying to give us some good news. God's going to remove the curse and there'll be no more death, disease, and suffering. They're talking about the end of the world. Christians want the world to end so badly. Ugh. That's why you can't trust them to save it. But what's going to happen to all the people who ever died and those who still be alive when the final judgment comes? What will happen to you and me? In the last book of the Bible, Revelation, our time machine, gives us some details about the future. So they are using it for the future. Okay, I was right at the beginning. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were opened. And another book was opened, which is the book of life, and the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. Revelation 2012. John, who wrote the book of Revelation, directed by God's Holy Spirit, of course, told us that some people are going to live with God in heaven forever. Yeah, so this is the part of the book where they try to scare kids into becoming Christians by telling them they're going to be tortured forever, for all eternity, brutally tortured by a loving, generous, merciful God. Does that sound contradictory to you? Sadly, though, John tells us that many people will be sent to everlasting punishment. Yeah. Also, this book is saying that nobody's in heaven or hell right now. When the world ends, that's when God chooses who goes to heaven and who goes to hell. So, everyone who's ever died is in like a state of limbo. The judgment hasn't occurred. That's one reason evangelicals are always frothing at the mouth for the end of the world to happen. You know? That's why they're always like, yay, the rapture's almost here. Because they want the world to end so that they can go to their heaven instead of just, making a heaven here on earth for everybody. At this stage, everyone reading this book should be asking the question, where am I going to spend eternity? Did you know that thinking back over all we've learned about dinosaurs helps us answer this question? I'll tell you where I'm going to spend eternity. I'm going to be Satan's right-hand man, dude. I'm going to be pitchfork holder. Dude, and when Satan goes on vacay, you know I'm first in line, dude. When he's up for retirement, you know I get to be the new Satan. Imagine you have a dinosaur bone in front of you. Give me 1 sec. I have something similar. Spinosaur tooth. It was over in my nightstand, where I keep my fossils, obviously. Imagine you have a dinosaur bone in front of you. Not actually a bone, but it'll serve. What lesson can you learn from this piece of dead bone? Well, Spinosaurus, I can learn is aquatic from this, because these teeth have a higher preservation bias than the teeth of a lot of other dinosaurs. I can learn that it had some small serrations on the teeth for snagging fish. I can learn that juveniles likely shed their teeth and grew in larger ones, because most of the teeth found are the teeth of juveniles. And based on where it was found, the Kim Kim beds in Morocco, I can tell you where it lived. Do you have to play with the crinkly toy while I'm recording a video? Don't you have a quieter toy you can play with? Cat's going buck wild back there. Dinosaurs were created on the 6th day of creation. I did not get that from this tooth. Please. Please. So it's just kind of given a recap of everything they've already told us. And you see all these prehistoric creatures and stuff, including some other megafauna, like the woolly mammoth here. Then it recaps the Noah stuff, and it says, like how Noah had to go through the door of the ark to be saved, we have to go through a door as well, the door of Jesus Christ. So I guess they do understand how metaphors work. A flawed man, Adam, brought sin into the world, and they need a perfect man, Jesus, to pay for it. Jesus wasn't perfect, by the way. That's shown in the Bible. Also, they're lumping a lot on Adam. I actually think it's interesting because a lot of Christians actually use the story of Adam and Eve to justify being misogynist, being like, oh, it's all Eve's fault. This book kind of almost solely places the blame on Adam, which is interesting. It talks about Jesus rising from the dead, save us from our sin. I just don't care. But there is art of dinosaurs boarding the ark again. They really love that image. This is propaganda. There's a lot about this. Just like, yeah, you can go to heaven, all you have to do is want it and ask for forgiveness. But then it asks, did dinosaurs go to heaven? It says, dinosaurs are animals, so are we. They're not made in the image of God. They don't have an immortal soul as every human being does. The Bible tells us that an animal's soul returns to the dust of the earth. However, a human soul lives on forever and ever. Full disclosure, I don't want to go to a heaven that doesn't have dinosaurs. God's word teaches us that you can be the nicest person in the world, doing great things for people, but if you don't trust in the Lord Jesus Christ, you can't go to heaven. Does that seem fair to anyone else? That's why it's so important that you have confessed your sins and accepted the free gift of salvation that Jesus offers. It's actually not free. It costs you 10% of everything you make. If you've never done this, then why not do it now? Why don't you pray the following prayer on this book's last page if you mean it? This is indoctrination, dude. Oh my god. Hey, we get this really cool Tanistrophius. Look at this boy. Look at this lengthy Leonard. Whoa! And this last bit of the book has a prayer that children can recite to be saved by Jesus. And so that the church can get their money and their free labor for the rest of their lives. And 2 Bible passages are lifted to challenge you. And it tells children they need to start studying the Bible. Yeah, kids, maybe start with Ezekiel 23:20. I'm kidding. Don't let any children read Ezekiel 23:20. Also, don't tell your children the story of Lot. Definitely don't do that. It says you need to read the whole Bible over and over again. Nobody's gonna do that, man. I tried. I literally tried to read the Bible all the way through. And it is an excruciating read. And trust me, nothing will make you leave Christianity faster than actually reading the Bible. Though a lot of stuff in the New Testament actually is kind of dope. Do you think God will ever make dinosaurs again so we will see them in the new earth? I hope so. Don't you? Kinda. I'd love to see them. And the last image of the book is the time-traveling kids watching a Maiasaur raise her young. Very interesting. This is a dinosaur that was really popular when I was a kid. It's just known for being a good mother. That's actually some decent imagery at the end of this book. But yeah, that is it for Dinosaurs of Eden by Ken Ham from Master Books. All in all, it's terrible. It's really bad. There are parts that drag and over-explain things, and I know this is like the pot calling the kettle black after this video, but it explains the same things over and over and over and over and over. The art is a high point. It's some cool vintage dinosaur art with a lot of Dinotopia vibes. Not all of it is great. The Carnotaurus is not the nicest looking guy. And this book has seemingly had some things changed from the first edition. I would be very interested to have a first edition copy of this and compare and contrast them. That probably wouldn't be a video. That would probably just be my own personal thing unless I found something really funny. But yeah, Ken Ham really hammed it up on this one. And God, I know that this video isn't going to change anyone's minds about anything. No young Earth creationist is going to get far in this video or even click on it. But I love science. I love science. I mean, this isn't even something I did intentionally. I'm wearing a friggin' Fibonacci sequence shirt right now. The golden ratio, I mean, it's more orange here. I guess that makes it the Fibonacci's sequence. But I still work in the sciences. I don't work in the mortuary sciences anymore. But I was top of my class for my funeral science degree. That's biology, that's chemistry, that's anatomy, that's pathology. And right now, I work with the bones of prehistoric creatures and fossils. I don't work with a lot of dinosaur fossils, admittedly. It's mostly invertebrates that I work with. Really cool, really fun. And the fact that there are people out there that either don't believe these prehistoric creatures existed or believe they do, but in the framework of this mythology, it's sad. And once again, you can be a Christian and accept science. It is incredibly easy. There's a woman who taught me in high school who I know is a devout Christian. Small town high school, you know these kind of things. But also, she inspired me to be a scientist. I probably would not be a scientist today without her. Devout Christian who believes in evolution, who knows dinosaurs were real. Do you think she's going to hell? No. I mean, I don't personally believe anyone's going to hell. This is cultish behavior. For legal reasons, I'm not calling him a cult. I'm just saying it's cultish behavior. Not everything has to be literal. You can believe the Earth's millions of years old. That's okay. You can believe in God. That's okay. But if you believe in this, that's foolish. That is intentionally denying the many wonderful things we've learned about this world. And I won't stand for it. I just won't. So that is it. Thank you all very much for watching this. I've been making this for a while. I was taking breaks throughout this because this was annoying. But also because I'm a human being that has things to do. But now it's late, so the main thing I need to do is go to sleep so I can actually get up in the morning and go work with my beautiful, beautiful little fossils. So if you have any other ideas for B3 reads, things like this, I'd love to have a book that denies the existence of dinosaurs. I don't want to do like a novel on B3 reads. I'm not Jenny Nicholson, okay? I don't want to sit here and read a whole novel in a sitting for this. I don't have the time or energy for that. Though I do love a good novel. Something smaller for video purposes, yes. Now, if it's something that I can just read on my own time, yeah, definitely recommend it and I'll do it. But for B3 reads, it either needs to be something smaller or something I can break up into a lot of parts. Because this is just a little kid's book and I have a feeling this video is going to be pretty long. So that's it. Thank you all once again. I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.